Hi everyone, welcome to another Data Vault Innovators Community Meetup. Today we've got a really interesting discussion for you. So we're going to actually be talking today about information governance and reg reporting in the financial sector, talking about some of the changes to the regulatory reporting for that sector, the information governance practices that are required to be able to respond to that. Some very specific examples around how Data Vault can be used to support those types of requirements as well. So it should be a really interesting conversation, and I hope you'll enjoy it and come along for the ride. Obviously, the Data Vault Innovators community is a professional organisation that we've created to really help connect technical professionals with data use professionals, really to support a conversation between all parties within a business around how to get business users and technical users together and understand the value of things like data vault, data quality, information governance. It's really based on community principles where we're bringing people together to share their knowledge so that we can all benefit. And I think you'll see today's conversation is part of that. So we're going to have lots of things through 2022, lots of really exciting and valuable pieces of content. So we'll talk a little bit more about the schedule as we get along. But we thank you all for being part of the community. And of course, obviously, if you're interested in any particular topics, we'd love to hear what you'd like to hear from, or invite you to participate if you think you've got something that would benefit the rest of the community. So I have two very special guests with me today. I have James and James. So we're going to be using probably Mr. Hartwright and Mr. Corner today. So James Corner being our special guest from Cortel, can you quickly introduce yourself and maybe give us a brief background on Cortel?
Yeah, thanks, Julien. So my name is James Corner. I'm the business and product manager for Cortel's financial services arm. We specifically focus on APRA regulatory reporting, APRA analytics, governance, and Cortel more broadly. It's got a long-standing history. We've got a 20-year history working in the analytics space. We're an IBM Platinum partner, which means we're the best of the best when it comes to analytics. We've got about 50 full-time consultants spread across New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and New Zealand as well. And we specialise in all industries, so it's not just financial services. We've delivered over 1,000 solutions to over 500 clients over that 20-year period. And we focus on everything from program delivery, solution design, support. So we offer the end-to-end support required for successful delivery. Thanks, Julian.
Great, thanks, James. Well, I know that Certus and Cortel have been partnering now for quite a few years, and obviously it's been a great partnership. We've helped deliver lots of things to our shared customers. But I really appreciate you being here. We'll talk a little bit about your background and the specifics of financial sector in a moment. James Hartwright, how about you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I work as one of the managing partners at Cognition Studio. My main role all through COVID has really been helping people understand where their data governance and data management maturity is, and giving them advice, playbooks, templates for improving all of that data governance side, including getting data governance councils and forums set up. So some strong pieces there of moving the organization, actually moving the business people through and making them think about data and the governance piece of not just the compliance part, but the fact that governance is there to promote the use of data and give people the tools and information so that they can use it.
Thanks, James. So you've both had quite extensive experience client side, which interestingly you both didn't cover. James Hartwright, I know you were I guess leading data and analytics at News Corp. And James, were you was it the CFO at Suncorp? Is that
Financial controller.
Financial controller, right? So we're going to lean a little bit on both of those experiences, I think, today as well. But let's dive into, I guess, the main topic being, reg reporting, APRA being the governing body for that, James Corner, with regard to the financial sector. Can you maybe give us a little bit of a history of kind of where it's been and what's changing, and that's probably a great place to start.
Yeah, indeed. No, thank you. So yeah, as you mentioned, I was financial controller at Suncorp. That was 10 plus years ago now. And look, Suncorp faced a number of challenges at the time with regards to APRA reporting. And it's similar to a lot of organisations where you see with a multitude of source systems. You've got a warehouse in place, data marts, source systems direct into the APRA reporting. And at that point in time, we needed a solution that could cover or account or aggregate all of that data, bring that data together, and then report through to APRA with a governance layer over the top. Traditionally, it was all done through canned source system reports, Excel reports, access databases. What you see traditionally in a lot of organizations, where organizations have grown through time. Unfortunately, finance or the accounting team usually plugs gaps through that journey, and the gaps keep getting plugged over time. You can see how that occurs, but it was just it was no longer a sustainable proposition. So at that point in time, I went to market to actually look for a solution, and there was nothing in the marketplace. So we looked at the actual applications to use, and we chose IBM's TM1, which is now Planning Analytics. And then we went to market to find an actual vendor, and Quartel came up trumps with that. So Quartel, Suncorp, and APRA actually all worked together on an early adopters program for APRA standard business reporting. So this was a language which was used to designed to simplify business to government reporting. And Suncorp jumped on that early adopters program with Quartel. And we delivered a solution which received a lot of great accolades, so much so that was actually featured in the Financial Review. And the government actually did a video on Suncorp with the solution that Quartel had designed. Quartel went on to actually work with Zurich, had a similar situation where there was an aggregation of a lot of data sets which needed to culminate in life actuarial calculations. And one of the outputs of that, besides the management reporting, was the APRA reporting. Quartel then went on to BT, so it's one of Australia's largest superannuation funds. And they faced a similar experience, multiple warehouses, multiple users across jurisdictions, multiple instances of D2A. So D2A is the direct to APRA portal that is in existence today. And Quartel designs a solution for the superannuation industry based on the experiences leveraged from Zurich and from Suncorp. And post that experience across insurance, banking, and superannuation, there was recognition that there's a product fit in the market, and that's why Quartel actually designed a purpose-built product, an application called CoreBiz. And that's the application that we go to market with now. We've got 15 plus clients on the application. Now, the application itself has been designed to cater for the existing D2A reporting requirements, but also the future state of where the regulator is going. Now, APRA is not a lone wolf in their approach to regulatory reporting. They are following overseas jurisdictions, namely in Europe. The Austrian central banks are one of the leading forerunners in this. And from a global perspective, there's a big push for regulators to start looking at more granular data sets. So the traditional form-based, when you aggregate data, you model your data, you bring your data into a summarized form to then submit through to APRA, through the D2A portal, is actually moving to the side. So D2A has been in existence for 15 to 20 years, and APRA recognises whilst it served its time, it's time to move forward. And they're moving to this new post D2A world, which is very heavily focused on data. And that's where we're currently at. So CoreBiz itself has been designed to accommodate not just D2A, but the future state of where APRA is going, and that's in the data set world, in what's called APRA Connect.
So the old world was, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, where we're coming from is providing reports to APRA on a range of different aspects that help them assess, I guess, things like loan risk and all of those sorts of things. Managing the portfolio, and is the financial institution managing their portfolio correctly? And it sounds like the change with the Connect transition is really about providing a lot more detail, and in fact providing a lot of the core data as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's spot on. And I guess prime example of COVID. Okay, so the government's made these announcements to support the economy, so you can defer your loan repayments on your mortgages. You can actually draw down on your super funds. All fantastic initiatives which the government introduced to help the economy through COVID. But APRA's a conduit to a lot of data going through to the Treasury. So therefore, Treasury actually requested the data to come from APRA on, I guess, the number of loan deferrals as an example, the volume of people drawing down on their super funds. And APRA realised then that they actually don't have the information. So whilst it's great they're getting all of this data set, all these forms of information, they just didn't have the granularity of the data that they needed. And subsequently, they had to go back to organisations with Excel spreadsheets and say, look, can you fill out this data? Then organisations then have to collate that data and actually populate it through into Excel and then submit through to APRA. As you can appreciate, a very arduous task, fraught with a lot of data errors and not really responsive to what the government needs. They're making decisions quickly. Unfortunately, the supply of information was very retrospective. So that's a prime example of APRA going, okay, we need actually more granular data. If we capture that data, we don't need to go back to organisations. We can start slicing and dicing that information itself and drawing the insights out that we need to service the requirements of the Treasury or World Bank or IMF, whoever it is. So by capturing that data initially, theoretically, it's going to save a lot of time for organisations.
So you can see, I guess, an organisation that's used to having to provide a set of reports, and they've got a process built up for creating those reports, whether it's monthly or quarterly or weekly or whatever it is. They've built up an infrastructure and a set of processes around delivering a set of reports. To then shift to having to provide a data set, that's a pretty significant shift where you're now not just trying to produce a report with a series of metrics, but you're actually trying to collate an entire data set that might require significant data integration to happen beforehand. So what have you seen from an organisational perspective as far as people trying to get ready to make this shift? And actually, let's start with, when does the shift have to happen?
Yeah, no, they're really good questions. So the shift itself has already started for Super. So Super went live, they're the first vertical to go live. So they are actually reporting through APRA Connect now. The ADI, the banking space, is moving across. They've started to move across, but really the primary impact for most organisations is September this year. So along with the APRA Connect transition, they've reviewed or rewritten prudential standards and the reporting requirements. So the primary impact for organisations is this September, when they have to actually start doing parallel runs of their data. So there's a big fundamental shift happening in March next year for one of the regulatory standards. But APRA is mandating that you have to actually run 2 periods of parallel runs, which takes us back to September this year. And they're also asking organisations to sign off through their Bank Exec Accountability Regime, the BEAR, otherwise known as FAR in insurance and super. This is a requirement that puts personal consequence on the execs of organisations to make sure that they're not just their data quality, but there's a whole host of controls and risks that are being managed within an organisation. That comes on the back of the Royal Commission, where there's much punitive consequences for individuals now. So within the banking space, APRA is saying, guys, in the banking space, you guys have to sign off on parallel runs for September this year. So the time frame to actually deliver this is very, very tight indeed. So that's going to be the primary impact. And then we're going to see a transition of most of the regulatory standards over the next several years. I'd say the most will be in the next 5 years. But yeah, this year is definitely when the rubber hits the road and organisations need to be in shape. What does that mean for organizations? Coming back to that first point of the question, look, you're absolutely right. IT needs to surface a lot more information than what traditionally would be surfaced. So if you're currently reporting in Excel, prime example, one of our superannuation clients have gone from reporting hundreds of rows of data in a form to reporting millions of rows of data. So obviously an Excel spreadsheet just doesn't service that requirement anymore. Added on top, how do you actually add in the governance and the controls that are required to give reporting teams and executives comfort over what's actually getting reported to the regulator? It throws up all these new governance questions because it's obviously not humanly possible to scout through so many rows of data. So that's just one of the interesting byproducts of this shift. How do you actually provide controls over such a large volume set of data?
Yeah, well, it's such a challenge, isn't it? Sounds huge. James Hartwright, this sounds pretty familiar to me. This challenge of larger growing data sets and and growing governance requirements and the ability to provide the proof points, the auditability of those things. And I know you've done a lot of work, looking at data privacy and governance around those sorts of things. Got any thoughts, I guess, around the back end challenge that this is going to present?
Yeah, that move, as James Corner said, it took me back to news time, where absolutely, the piece that had been going on for years was, right, we've got somebody, data literate finance person, who's gone off to the source system, grabbed the data, grabbed it in an aggregate form, because that's pretty much all they could do in an Excel form, and feed that through to planning and analytics and help with the forecasting and reporting. And it's human, and it's at that point it was manual, so the intelligent automation stuff wasn't there. It wasn't as mature. So not only do you get the fact that there's somebody running it, and that it's not at the a granular level of detail, but also there's human error in there. So we built out a set of processes which brought in, and it brought in less about data governance, more about comfort, trust that we'd gone through the same processes, that we'd got the same sort of data from the same sort of source, run it through the same processes, and built at that point that aggregate view. But knowing that we could take from that aggregate and find every individual record and every single process. And that was just, that, as I say, that was very much, that was actually through up to SOX, so through into the US. But just the trust and the speed, traceability of all of that just gives anybody in finance, and now anybody in the executive position who may be fined for not having it, just way more comfort. But yeah, I'll come to that next bit, which is, even in that data ops side, a lot of what we were doing was just going, right, we've got the data, let's do a bit of transformation and get it into the right structure so that it fits in with the rest of the warehouse, and then provision it out. But there's still a lot of logic and code that goes on in there. And of course, source systems never stay static. We'll get new data, new systems by new companies, and they all have to be integrated. And you get the absolutely common problem in warehousing, traditional warehousing, is, well, what's the business rule? Well, how does that business rule need to change? And how can I still show that the data that I had and the business rules that I were running were still valid over time? So that's actually at the point where I started talking to Certus before I came over. What was really brilliant idea that was 30 years in the making, of atomic business rules. So actually saying, moving from that ETL to ELT, and saying, right, we've got the raw data, we've got it there, we're managing it, we've got all the metrics part, but anytime we do any adjustment, we apply it through a business rule. And we apply it through an atomic business rule. So it's not a big bunch of code of 2,000 lines. It's this logic is working on this piece of data and generating this value that we can track, test, prove, and that we conversion. And that was just a brilliant light bulb moment from the perspective of not only have we got something that is more manageable and we can version control, but it also continues with that trust in the data and speed of doing something, not having to retest the 1,000 lines of code, just retest that little bit of new function or change function that we did. And I think that's going to become very, very strong and very much a requirement as more and more data needs to go out there for compliance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure our more Data Vault savvy listeners will recognize that you've described Raw Vault and Business Vault perfectly there, which is good, because I mean, part of this discussion is about how do we help people to start solving this problem. And so, James Corner, you've described Core Biz and the development of that over the last 10 years or as long as it's been to get to the point it is now. It is a wealth of knowledge of the business rules required for financial institutions to be able to provide that reporting and that analytics to APRA, and what the change to becoming more a file submission of a large set of data with that analytics applied to it fits nicely in a combination of Data Vault and Core Biz. We can provide the reconciliation, Core Biz can provide the business rules, and we can then, from the Business Vault, select, the file that's needed to submit, the files, because I'm sure it's more than just one. But it does make me think about, there's data integration challenges, there's also data quality challenges. What's APRA's tolerance for, poor data quality and the timeframes for bringing that into line?
Yeah, look, as mentioned before about the September timeframe, it is quite aggressive with regards to the immediacy of deliverables. APRA have said they're going to give a little bit of grace period on the data quality, but having said that, APRA are much more, forceful. They've got a mandate for enforceable undertakings, so they're not going to tolerate poor data quality for too long. Actually, with the economic and financial statistics requirements that came out, the RBA through APRA introduced data quality thresholds. So they're sick of actually getting resubmissions of data because the Treasury is making economic decisions on this data. They need reliable data. So they introduced these thresholds into your reporting metrics. And if you breach those thresholds, then there's a letter to your chairman. There's no mucking around. Whilst they're having a bit of a grace period, they won't tolerate too much. You'll need to have a program or work in place. And I think because we are surfacing so much more information going forward, so much more data, the ability to hide data or inaccurate data is not going to be there, because you are actually reporting on a very granular level, account level. So if there is anything being washed through in another category traditionally, it's not really going to stand up. Added to which, when you think through what a lot of organizations do, so credit provisioning is an example where you've got overlays on your data. How do they actually get a portion down to an account level? These are considerations that need to be applied. So really, in answering your question, there is a slight grace period there for organizations. I think there's a recognition that source systems don't always have the controls that are always needed, and a lot goes in, comes through the system. But the data remediation program of work definitely needs to be a key focal point. And look, one of the big opportunities, and I really, really praise APRA for this, is they're actually issuing statements to the execs, to the board, to say, look, this program of work is happening. It is happening, it's here. Now is the chance to make change. And you need to invest. Because unfortunately, it's the reporting teams and the accountants, the CFOs. The CFOs are usually the worst exec in an organization to actually ask for money themselves. But they need to invest. You can't tolerate inadequate systems anymore, inadequate aggregation of data. You need your controls throughout that data flow. So APRA is actually issuing statements to execs and to boards to say, look, guys, this is happening as we speak. You need to invest. And I think that's a great great opportunity for organizations to really challenge what they've been doing for the last 10 to 20 years. No, this is not tolerable. We can't tolerate this anymore. We need to make change. APRA is giving us the license to invest. It's a compliance function, so often usually compliance gets pushed to the side. But on the back of the Royal Commission, this is no longer. It can't be. You have to invest. This is happening whether you like it or not. You have to do something, and it's tight time frames. And that's where the opportunity is something like a Data Vault and Iris solution, which is out of the box and combined with Core Viz, provides a great opportunity. We can come in and configure the solution to what's needed and deliver to those timeframes. So yeah, it's a big opportunity at the moment. It's a big opportunity for organisations to make that change, and you've got support from APRA to drive that change.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it as a consumer. We all want, more transparent, but also more, I guess, secure financial sector. So, we all can't help but be consumers of their services. So, the better and more secure and more trustworthy it all is, the better for all of us. James Hartwright, I was thinking about, what James was just saying around the data quality stuff, and it's that expansion of governance. And I know you do a lot of consulting around, governance strategy and implementation. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit around extending just traditional governance into, data quality that will support these types of initiatives?
Yeah. So a lot of data governance structures will quite rightly focus on things that are KPIs. How can I be happy that the stats that I'm producing that go all the way up to the board are trailing the best truth, as close to truth as actually is. KPIs link back to critical data elements, and critical data elements are those things that are, the big movers and shakers in terms of your underlying data to get up to those KPIs. From those critical data elements, what's the thing that you need to do? You need to build that, engender that trust in that data. And yes, the underlying metrics of, there were 1,000 records generated in the source system, there's 1,000 records landed in the lake, and there's 1,000 records that I can see on the report. That's a great piece, and a piece that you shouldn't ignore. But things around the data quality, take those critical data elements and start applying data quality on top of them. So, and some great tools out there just doing straight profiling. So let's look at the data type, make sure that all the dates are actually dates and valid dates. That if we're using reference data, which we will in a lot of cases, that I've got a known reference data structure for those, and that I track that data quality against those. And so it's not just going, all right, I've got some data quality errors, let me just put to the side and hope nobody notices. As James Corner's just said, that's not going to be allowed for APRA anymore anyway. So you've got to get that data and a process going, right, let's scan the quality, profile what I've got at the moment, put some rules in there that start tracking it, and then put processes in that add data stewardship on top of anything that comes out as this looks a bit weird. And then the next level up is to start putting trending on top. So starting to look at data that's maybe a little bit off, out of the norm. And there's a whole ton of capability out there in the machine learning side or just straight analytics that can look at boundaries and alert you on the when things start going a little bit off kilter. The piece there is definitively back to pushing back to source. So if you're starting to see data quality issues crop up in data that you are pushing up to the board or pushing over to APRA, usually it's back at the source, and it's usually some business processes changed, or the new people that have been trained weren't quite trained in the right way. They're doing a little bit wrong. So it should always be a push back to source, because those beautiful atomic business rules that we talked about a second ago are really easy to fix up bad data, but it's not real. You should always push back to the source. Can we change this data capture screen? can we do something that stops the rot as early as possible and lets it through? Historic data you may still have to apply, but put those data quality processes in, have the alerts, and have your data stewardship stuff set up, because that's going to continue to bring the trust in. There's obviously setting up data stewards, having data stewards run the things, but that's actually another piece in terms of showing what value and what risk there is if data stewardship isn't done correctly. But yeah, changing people is just as hard as changing process.
Oh, absolutely. Probably harder. Yeah, it's really interesting. I was thinking just then, there's so much of this that's driven by really good management of metadata. Metadata kind of became a government buzzword a couple of years ago, and people were trying to explain what it was. But hopefully most of the people in this audience understand that if we manage metadata well, we can prove the origin and the flow of all of this information through and give the best possible chance of it being reported as correct with the proof it needs. So that's interesting in itself. And you were talking about the atomic business rules, James. It'll be really interesting here because they will then have the ability to apply last year's rules against this year's data, or new rules against old data, old rules against new data, to see where those changes are happening. And I think that'll be a really nice shift for APRA to really be able to get a control on how the financial sector's moving. Yeah. But that kind of also opens up the question of, well, what other things will APRA start to consider in scope for review or monitoring or analysis? So James Corner, question for you. Do you think that this is a pretty big shift? Do you have a view of what other things might be in APRA's scope over the next few years?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the regulators are working much closer together. So ASIC, ACCC, APRA, ATO, and look, the atomic business rules. It's a fantastic opportunity, because at the end of the day, the data is your data. It's foundation of what you need to report, and how you apply regulatory taxonomies, reporting taxonomies over the top should be dictated by the regulators, and is dictated by the regulators, but it's the same source data. And there's nuances because the RBA, for example, needs a different definition of the data than what APRA might need from a prudential requirement. So based on what the regulator is trying to govern and what their mandate is, there's nuances, always nuances to how those rules need to be applied. But at the end of the day, it's the same source data. It's just what regulatory rules get applied over the top. So those atomic business rules are a fantastic opportunity to really apply that nuance over the data. So yeah, without doubt, there's going to be a lot more, I guess, intent to harmonise data requirement or reporting requirements. But at the end of the day, you still need that agility, that flexibility to be able to apply business logic or business rules over that foundation data based on what the regulators are requiring. And that's an important design feature that's needed for any future solution.
All right, well, let's talk about... Can I just throw one extra bit in there from experience? Yeah, so that piece. So APRA, yes, they're a regulatory body, but they also have, in most cases I've seen, a good understanding that what you're actually doing to pull all this data together. So I had a really positive APRA experience with a client a couple of years ago, where we just found that what we'd been reporting for the last 2 years was wrong. And that, it wasn't trying to hide it away. It was just, hey, yeah, we had a bit of logic that was incorrect. What we were able to do was because we were going through a data vault maturity process, was to go, we've been reporting this wrong. We've now fixed that, and we've got the business rule that works and the right logic. And under that data, we can actually show you the differences. And that's again, I'll throw it in, the atomic business rules and data vault, being able to show APRA, we were doing it wrong, here's the new, and here are the number of records and the total values that we could just apply and provision that to them and saying, right, that was wrong, it's right now, we can show you the differences and we can show you why it's better moving forward. And it was just a wonderfully positive experience working with APRA in the go. Yep, everybody makes mistakes, and it's beautiful that you can show us that transition through.
Yeah, that's quite powerful to be able to, to show that difference and show the improvement, and obviously to put your hand up when you have made a mistake and call it out. And really, you couldn't do that if you had maybe a traditional warehouse with embedded rules and all of that type of thing. So let's talk about where organisations are at currently, because I think there'll be probably plenty of people watching this that actually are in a financial institution thinking we don't quite have this under control. So James Corner, where do you see most of your customers sitting currently? What is the big challenge for them for trying to solve this problem?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, it really depends on the nature of the client. I do feel some clients need a heart and lung transplant to meet the requirements. Others, I've got their finger on the pulse more. So look, the key is to get a program work started. Now there's a lot of discovery going on at the moment, understanding the requirements, how do we solution this, what can we do, what our options are, and in-house builds and not really recommended, just given the time frames and the experiences that you see with in-house builds. A lot of organizations we speak to as well, they're just absolutely time poor when it comes to IT. There's so much happening. IT teams are tied up for several months in advance, so they just don't have the resources to actually deliver. What's also interesting is you're seeing obviously a lot of NEOs coming to the market, and we're working with several NEOs now, and they recognise themselves. I mean, one NEO is specialised in designing all of those systems themselves, and they're a big multinational NEO. But what they're saying is this is a specialty field in and of itself. We don't have the energy, the time, the resources to learn what's required to deliver this. So whilst we are developing in-house most things, we actually want an off-the-shelf solution which we can go do the big tick on compliance, governance, controls. The executives can sleep at night, and then they can focus on the core functionality, core value-add activities of organisations. So whilst there is this discovery phase going on, the timeframes are just demanding that you need to get started ASAP because there is some significant changes. So yeah, that's what we're seeing at the moment. Organisations are coming to us to say, look, Quartel, your solution core is, we've got a lot of advocacy, a lot of organisations talk between themselves. They recommend what we've done for them as an avenue to pursue. And we're getting a growing list of clients coming to us to say, look, we need help to deliver this. So it's great for us. I think it's smart from an organisational perspective, and they can outsource that accountability to a degree to say, look, please get us across the line here. We need to move forward, and we need something much stronger than what we currently have.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense when when there is something that you can take off the shelf and and it solves. That effectively solves that problem for you. Obviously, there's implementation and all those sorts of things, but if if APRA knows what they're going to get out of your application, and I think obviously Certus and Quartel have been working together for quite a while. We know that the combination of what we've done with Iris and with CoreBiz can help solve the solution, and this move to the new APS 220 regs around preparing the file for submission, and the back end dealing with all of that data integration if some of those systems are a little bit hard to extract from, and then plugging that in with with data quality management and governance. We've got to obviously get that in with existing tools and those sorts of things as well. Make sure that we're helping them grow their internal processes they've already developed and expand on those, and not just rip and replace and all those sorts of things. So I agree, it's a program of work. It's not a hey, here's the magic pill, but CoreBiz certainly helps to package it up and really take a big bite out of the whole problem. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it goes hand in hand because a lot of organisations have got that cloud-based strategy. They've all got the strategic intent to go to cloud. They're on a different migration pathway or different levels of that journey, and it's one of the other big topics that we're seeing is that cloud-based IT security questions which continually come through. Knowing that APRA's got a big focus on the IT security requirements.
So, I mean, James Hartwright, you tend to talk with most of our organisations about where they're heading and what's in the future. Solving reg reporting sounds like a big kind of headache and a big challenge you kind of have to do. But there's value in having better controls around your data. And what opportunities kind of exist, do you think, once people have that better insight into what's going on within their customer base or the product base?
Yeah, I really liked the word James Corner threw out earlier, which was opportunity. I've got a client I'm working with at the moment who have an old creaky data warehouse and are ready to go on their new one. And it's almost perfect timing that they've got a set of compliance things to fulfill, because what they can now do is go and grab from those original sources, prioritize those sources, and bring them through effectively the data lake raw vault process, and then create a domain-orientated data mart that fulfills that process of doing APRA reporting. But what they're doing it in a way whereby they're going, okay, I understand that these structures, these pieces of integration are actually what are going to be my enterprise use. So they're doing it in such a way that they're going, right, we're building this. We know that we've got to build this by September. But they're doing it in a way that those rules can be promoted back into an enterprise management process. So yeah, absolutely into that opportunity space. If you've got a level of capability where you can grab that data from the source, and you can land it and stage it and do it in a very templated, automated way. Yes, Data Vault. That building those domain-orientated solutions doesn't just work for APRA. It can work for your marketing department. It can work for the sales guys and gals. That each of those, when you're built on that raw data and you're happy and confident the raw data is telling you the truth from the source, you can start building all of those beautiful lenses over that data for the different APRA or ATR or et cetera views, while still having a good, strong control. So yes, I agree with James, that the IT department are actually really, really constrained. And over COVID, in truth, what I've seen is that the business has gone, we're, irrespective of whether we've had to hunker down or we're going, now's our opportunity to build stuff, it's gone in on that data team of, right, you need to remove costs from the organization or tell me where my cost is, or if I'm putting a new product out there, you need to tell me as quickly as possible whether it's doing really well or going south or areas. So that IT hit, I'll come back to it, having templated, automated, repeatable processes is the only way you're going to get this done. And yeah, I don't really care if it's Data Vault or doing a data lake, just having something whereby you've got an ELT process that you're landing the raw data, you've got your metrics and your processes, and then you're building business rules and structures on top of that. That has to be the way to go.
It kind of sounds like you're both saying that it's never a bad idea to understand your customer more. Which, yep. What a revelation. So I'm going to be the buzzword guy and go, okay, well, from here, how does AI fit in? How does machine learning fit in? Because if we're improving the data sets and the quality of the data sets, is there opportunities there? And you two can fight over who wants to answer that one.
Go, James.
Yeah, look, without doubt. So we're exploring the AI within the solution already. just in terms of data quality over such a large data set, there's a lot of AI functionality that can be brought in. So AI traditionally, maybe it's just in my head, been used for more marketing, customer focused stuff, whereas this is now actually allowing you to draw not just data quality insights from your data, and there's innovative ways that we're exploring that, which is really quite exciting to simplify the compliance function again. But over and above that, because you've got a large data set and all of your data, because APRA has got requests a great breadth of data, to actually apply insights or to draw insights out of that data using AI capabilities makes sense, not just on the data quality, but the actual business insights that you can then go to your exec with and say, hey, look at this. What about this? What if we do this? Have we noticed this? It's really quite an opportunity with such a broad data set to leverage AI for both the data quality, but also the business insights.
Yeah, you can feel like it might have some impact on, anti-money laundering and those sorts of things. If they've got such large data sets and they can, run AI across it to find patterns that would otherwise be kind of, not visible. James Hartwright, any thoughts?
Yeah, that's totally. I was involved in a project last year looking at that very thing and looking at the gamification in money laundering. You fix one piece and somebody will find the next one. So yeah, continuous learning is very much a part of the future. But yeah, back to the what I'm seeing. So again, to that customer side. So the BI tools, so Power BI, Tableau, etc., are already building in capabilities that will draw out trends from historic data, will find anomalies in the data and tell you where it thinks that an anomaly occurred and why. That you can build out forecasting pieces, and that's a user-friendly front-end tool. You have to have the data orientated in a sort of a time series, data over time, snapshots, but having that capability there that starts just allowing you to go and see it, but then starts alerting you when those things occur. That's just I've been 30 odd years in data, and that's absolutely all one of the main things I've wanted to do is to alert people, give them it's sort of when you've got your IT support, you never want to hear from them unless you've got an issue that you need resolving, and that's where we should be applying the AI side. So very definitely on that front end, in terms of to the business, to your users, giving them the tools and the functions on top of the data that they probably know just as well as you do. The second part, as James said, was in around that data quality side. So I've been playing in the other areas. So we do a lot with IoT and SCADA data in the utilities side. And there's an arena called statistical quality control. And it's, you've got all of that IoT data. We're getting there with many organizations in transactional data, but it's looking at, hey, that this is a Tuesday in March, we're 2 weeks before Easter. This is the sort of amount of data through the day that I would normally expect. And that's through machine learning training. And if something weird occurs in that day or at some point in that day, or the data range, it will, again, alert. So it goes, this looks a bit weird. Please, human, come and have a look at what's going on there. And I think there's going to be a ton more of those where human augmentation, where the machine's doing all of the smart stuff, and it's bringing that to the attention of the human to go, something weird here, I don't know what it is, but can you have a look at it? The next part is that the human feeds back going, yeah, that was something a bit weird. If that ever happens again, tell me about it. Or actually, no, because of this and this, and here's a bit more data, don't worry about it. Use this further information to make a decision on whether you alert me to it next time. And I think that's where all of that AI piece is going to be going through before it takes over the world.
Yeah, it's managed by exception, but the exceptions get smarter every time. It
totally
makes a lot of sense. And I love that in a conversation around reg reporting and compliance and governance, we managed to talk about gamification, even if it was only for a second. So that's pretty good. So all right, we're gonna start wrapping it up. James Corner, where do people find out more info around Core Biz?
Yeah, so you can come to Cortel's website, or you can call me direct. I'm not sure if our details get shared.
We will share details.
Yeah, so yeah, best to come through to myself, and happy to have a discussion about where you are, what opportunities exist, and just even if you need to enlighten your knowledge on the subject, just feel free to reach out. I'm always available.
Great, and I will obviously mention that that Certus is obviously partnering with Cortel, so we can be a conduit for that. And obviously there is an integration point with the Iris platform that Certus has developed for automated data vaults, so help solve the solution as quickly as possible. So I want to thank you both for joining me today. I think we managed to make compliance interesting, if even for a little while. So I really appreciate it. I think it's actually really amazing and important about what it actually adds. So I appreciate both of you joining. For everyone watching, thank you for joining and coming along. Just want to mention there will be a lot more content coming out through 2022 on the DVIC. So make sure you hit the button on the website to make sure that you sign up and you see all those alerts for all the new content that's coming. So there will be a showcase coming shortly, and we'll be showcasing a range of different solutions. So that will be really interesting, and a lot more content actually coming in different sprints through the year. So another meetup to come very shortly as well. So I appreciate you all joining, and have a great day.